JCPenney has been a very dramatic story since activist investor Bill Ackman got involved in the stock. He owns 18% of the stock currently, and his investment is underwater. Paula, the drama just heated up again this week. He sent 2 letters to the company's board. He wants to get rid of the interim CEO, Mike Allman. I just haven't seen anything like this before. Have you?
Well, you know, this is on the level of like an icon type of like letter writing campaign. You don't so much see this from Bill Ackman. He tends to be more measured in his approach. And you know, this kind of temper tantrum, such a public temper tantrum at the board, makes me wonder if there's something behind it. I mean, he's known for making these real estate plays that have some kind of a property, you know, something involved property valuation in the background, like Target, for example. So I'm starting to think that he might be moving more toward thinking about his backup plan for JCPenney.
Now, you do mention Target and the monetization of assets, but Target, he didn't win in that situation. He lost that fight with the board there. And my theory on this monetization of retail assets, it doesn't really work. Look at Sears. Eddie Lampert, he's another investor that bought Sears back in 2005, tried to do the same thing. His whole investment thesis was based on that, and he hasn't been able to monetize those assets so well either. So when you're in the malls, this type of real estate, I think it's just hard to get money out of.
Well, I mean, you raised a good point about the property assets attached to retail. Now, and the other thing is that when he first came in, Ackman first came into JCPenney, he did monetize some of those assets. He sold some back to General Growth, for example, another company he was involved with in their bankruptcy. And that was right when he first came in and brought on Ron Johnson, who was from Apple, who was supposed to turn it into this fabulous, you know, retail chain, and he needed the money to do all those store upgrades. And as we see, that kind of fell pretty flat.
Yeah, and it fell apart because part of the reason I think people don't realize Ron Johnson is not a retailer. Yes, he was in charge of the stores at Apple, but he's not a dyed-in-the-wool retailer. You need a retailer to run stores like this. It's going to be interesting. They're trying to get Alan Questrom, who turned the company JCPenney, they turned that around in early 2000, saved the company then. They want to bring him back onto the board and try to get him to get things going again, but he's only going to do it under very specific circumstances. But then there's also, you have Perry Capital, who is another large shareholder in JCPenney stock, and they want to bring Ken Hicks back. Do you know that he was the chief merchandising officer of JCPenney back when Allman was the CEO the first time around?
Oh, that's right, and I had forgotten that until you brought it up to me. But, you know, and it's interesting about the Perry Capital play because he started really building up that stake in about June. So that would have been, you know, sometime after the first quarter earnings, which were a disaster. And so obviously he's a value investor, and he sees something there, something that maybe the rest of us, you know, are waiting for the turnaround, and maybe it's coming.
When you take a look at the stock, it did stabilize when they brought Mike Allman back in because it calmed investors' fears about the company and what was going to happen. And you know what? Suppliers feel real comfortable with him. He always kept the balance sheet at JCPenney in pristine shape. So people felt comfortable with Allman. But in the last 2 months, the stock is down 27%. And when you get activist investors involved in a stock like this, I think it's just something that you have to stay away from. JCPenney is in deep trouble here, and it's going to be a story to continue to watch over the weeks and months ahead. In 2 weeks, they're going to be reporting earnings. Thanks, Paula, for your insights. I'm Lindsey with TheStreet.